Hi, I'm Roxana Wells, and I'm going to give you a quick sample lesson. I don't have any students, so I'm just going to kind of go over what I would normally do with these students. So today's lesson is going to be on count versus non-count foods. Okay, so this is a lesson that would typically help students remember how to use how much versus how many, which can be confusing because it's not something that's present in all languages, especially Asian languages. Those plurals can be kind of confusing. So we're going to start with a warm-up and introduction. Okay, and we'll review. We're assuming that we did a lesson already on how much versus how many. Students have a basic understanding of count versus non-count words, and we're going to move on to just talking about foods today. So today, then we're going to move on to introducing the rules for non-count foods. We're going to figure out those rules together. Third thing we're going to do is hand out some foods to the students, either with flashcards or actual foods, and have them kind of sort them out into count versus non-count. Fourth thing we'll do is we're going to write a short dialogue using those foods, maybe in a setting like a coffee shop or a farmer's market, that kind of thing. And finally, the kids are going to present those dialogues to the class. Okay, so we're going to start with our warm-up. So kids have already learned how much versus how many. Okay, so for example, how much water is there and how many apples are there. So apples would be count, water would be non-count. So kids for their warm-up would write in their notebooks count versus non-count as they go around and take attendance. Kids are writing in their notebooks trying to think of count versus non-count foods that they can think of. For example, apples, shirts, flowers, pencils, anything you put with an S on the end is a count noun. Anything that you would not would be a non-count noun. For example, information, water, hair, sand, those are all non-count words. So today we're going to apply that to food. So that just gets their brains moving. So now we're going to take a look at some different foods, okay? And we're going to try to come up with some rules for whether a food is count versus non-count. So I brought 4 foods with me today. The first thing we're going to look at is an orange. Okay, so we've got a couple of oranges here, and kids are going to see that you can easily count this item. This is countable. You can ask for 1 orange, you can eat the whole thing, you can easily hold it in your hand and say I have 1, 2, 3 oranges. Okay, that's easy to count. Some foods are not so easy, so they might be non-count. We're going to figure out some rules. So we're going to take a look first at some rice. Okay, and I discussed this with kids and they'd find out that you pretty much can't count this. This would be rule number 1. It's too small to count. Okay, so things like rice and pasta and cereal, okay, and corn are things that are too small to count. So you would never say I want 1 rice, 2 rice, 3 rice. It's too small to count, so we're just going to say rice. We're not going to count them. So that's rule number 1. It's too small to count. That would make it a non-count food. The second rule we're going to come up with, we're going to take a look at this glass of liquid. This is a juice. So I'd say, can you count this? Students might say, I can count the glasses, and I'll remind students we're talking about what's inside the glass. Can you count the juice? Can you say, I want 1 drop of juice? No, you'd want juice in general, so that's a non-count word. Okay, so we can count the glasses, we can't count the juice. So this is a non-count word, and so are all liquids: water, milk, juice, tea, coffee. Okay, and finally we're going to take a look at this item, the bread. Okay, so a loaf of bread. Now, why would we not count this? Why do we just say bread and not, can I have 1 bread, 2 breads? The reason is because it's too big to eat the whole thing. Okay, yes, you could probably eat the whole thing if you wanted to, but typically we cut it up. Okay, so if it's too big to eat the whole thing, for example, pizza, cake, bread, meat, okay, you wouldn't eat the whole cow. Those are things that are also non-count. So we've got 3 basic rules: too small to count, it's a liquid, or too big to eat the whole thing. So now the kids have taken a look at the foods, they've touched them, they've come up with some rules. I'm going to pass out either some real foods, or today I just have some cards to show them, and I'll pass them out to small groups. Okay, so the first sample of foods I have, okay, are things that you might find in a coffee shop. Okay, so first we have coffee, cereal. I threw an apple in there, which is a review word, so that helps the kids that maybe are a little farther behind. They'll remember apple from the warm-up. Cake and muffin. So kids would have to sort these different foods into count versus non-count foods. For example, you can count muffins and apples, but you can't count coffee, that's a liquid. Cereal, that's kind of like the rice, it's too small to count. And the cake, you typically won't eat the whole thing, you'll have just a piece. So count versus non-count foods. So the kids will kind of go over that in small groups. I'd come around and help them debate, well, you know, maybe you can count the cereal, but I think it's too small. So I'd kind of help them out with that, and we'd definitely sort those out. Then together we put them all up on the board so the kids can really see in the whole class how to sort those. So these kids have the coffee shop boards, the other group might have foods for a Thanksgiving meal, the other group might have foods that you typically find at a farmer's market. The last thing we'll do is to have more of an independent practice, is to have the kids take these foods that they had in those small groups and turn it into a dialogue. This is taking it to the next step, okay? For example, would you like some coffee? Some is something that you'd say with a non-count word, okay? You don't want to say, do you want one coffee, two coffee, okay? Sure. How much? Remember, you'd say how much with a non-count word like coffee, not how many, okay? Just a little bit. Again, little bit is a non-count word, okay? And 2 muffins, please. So 2 muffins, count words. So they're distinguishing between count and non-count. Okay, we'd present these to the class, and we would definitely review that the next day. Hope that was helpful, and I look forward to meeting you guys. Thanks.